To summarise my feelings, regardless of the outcome on Saturday, I would like to see David Moyes dismissed as manager of West Ham United this weekend. Even if we beat Everton, I'd still like to see a new manager in place for that game against Newcastle in 2.5 weeks' time. Do I think that'll happen if we win? Which is entirely possible? No. I think if we beat Everton, David Moyes will be here for the game at St James's Park in 2.5 weeks' time. Fail to win, however, I expect him to get sacked this weekend. But for myself, if we beat Everton, I'm not going to change my mind. I'm not going to start believing that David Moyes is going to turn this round because we've beaten one of the poorest teams in the Premier League. My opinion won't change. My opinion is I would like to see a new manager at West Ham United. I'll explain why in the video, but don't worry, this is the last David Moyes related video until after the Everton game, unless something dramatic changes in the next 2 days, which is unlikely. Tomorrow we'll have our Everton preview. We've got a video with Darmesh to get all the latest on the West Ham transfers. Then on Friday we've got our opposition preview with an Everton fan, which should be a good one, should be interesting. But first, let's kick it off with a little update on who's saying what regarding David Moyes. This isn't what I'm saying, this is what other people are saying. Then we'll discuss it hypothetically. Sean Whetstone is claiming it'll cost West Ham $7 million to sack David Moyes. Now this adds up. We've known since he came back that his annual salary is $5 million, or it's been widely reported at least it's $5 million. We know he's got 16, 17 months left on his contract, so $7 million sounds about right. The only worrying thing about that is it would suggest that there's no clause in his contract, that there's no heavily reduction of compensation due to him should West Ham be in the bottom three at all. Do you remember when Tottenham sacked Mourinho, and it was a case of, well, why have they done that? They got a final at the weekend, and it was because if he won a trophy they had to pay more compensation, and so they had to sack him then, so that just in case Tottenham actually won the final, Mourinho would be entitled to more money. So you would hope that there was some sort of clause in David Moyes' contract to guard against that. Bearing in mind, the summer he signed that deal, he just kept us up. He came in, took over from Pellegrini in a relegation battle, kept us up. You'd imagine the first thing on the board's mind was there's a possibility that we're going to get relegated this coming season. Not the one we're in. Back then, when we finished 6th in the league that season, it was feasible that we were going to be going into another relegation battle. So to not have a clause or anything in the contract to protect against that just seems incredibly naive. But $7 million is how much it will cost. I just hope the financial package isn't the reason David Moyes is still in a job. It would be completely wrong for any club to keep their manager purely because of finances. Not because you've got faith that he'll turn things round, but just because you can't afford to get rid of him, or you don't want to pay that money just yet, so you're going to hang on and see if you can turn things around. And in fairness to David Sullivan, I don't think that's a reason. I don't think David Moyes is here because of that $7 million compensation package. And then you've got his backroom staff as well to get dismissed too. I think it's because of one or two reasons. Either David Sullivan's got faith that Moyes will turn it around, or David Sullivan believes Moyes deserves the chance at turning it around. Two slightly different things. One's credit in the bank, one's something he can do in the future. I think that's why Moyes is still here. But I do think that faith and or credit is running very, very low. I think this week, going by what we've been told and stuff, I do get the impression that the club are now starting to reach out to unemployed managers to see if they would be interested in taking over for David Moyes. Probably whittling down their shortlist, because after the defeat against Wolves, we got told immediately that Moyes isn't going anywhere and there isn't a replacement lined up. Now that would indicate what they mean there is that if they sack Moyes on the Sunday, we don't know who will be in charge Monday morning. There isn't anybody at this point in time. It would be somebody internal that would step in as a caretaker role. Whereas I imagine this week they're trying to sort that out so that should they decide to sack him on Sunday after the Everton game, come on Monday morning on the training ground, there's a new manager. He's in place already. A bit like what we did with David Moyes after Pellegrini, after Slaven Bilic. We sat them, Moyes came in immediately. We had the replacement lined up. It was done and dusted. I've got a feeling that's what this week is all about. Maybe that's part of the reason why Moyes has retained his job for the Everton game. Not the biggest one, but a contributing factor possibly. Because after the Wolves game, assuming there was no replacement lined up, they would have had a decision to make, which is who's taking charge of the Everton game. We don't have anybody to come in, so somebody already at the club is in charge of that one. And their choice would have been David Moyes or Mark Warburton. Warburton's the most likely candidate. Should we need a caretaker, he'd be the one to step in. Possibly Kevin Nolan, but I think Warburton, given his CV in football, given his managerial experience, he would be the one to take charge on a temporary basis. I know some people would suggest Mark Noble, but I can't really see. I can't convince myself that that was a possibility, stepping down from the sporting director, even just for a game, and then going back upstairs. If he was unemployed, possibly, but he's got no managerial experience. He's already got a role at the club. I think it would have been naive of West Ham to let Mark Noble take it over, and I think it would have been a little bit silly of Mark Noble to do it as well in case he lost, etc. So I think the decision would have been almost David Moyes or Mark Warburton, and possibly they just felt that David Moyes has got more chance of winning that game than what Mark Warburton does. I don't know, I'm just speculating, I'm just talking about my thoughts out loud. But the reason I would like to see Moyes sacked is because even if we beat Everton, who are at the moment the worst team in the league, along with us, we are the two worst teams in the Premier League. That's not going to change my opinion in regards to David Moyes potentially turning this round. It won't. It doesn't matter. It almost does not matter. At the moment, no matter where you look, all the records are bad for David Moyes. I've only been able to find one, which is encouraging. But the records at the minute, 1 point in from his last 21. Bilic, Allardyce, Pellegrini, they never had a record as bad as that. They never ever went through a period where they only had 1 point from an available 21 points. They were never as bad as what David Moyes currently is. Pellegrini was sacked after 19 games. 19 points in 19 games. Well, David Moyes has now got 15 from 19. And this is where the good thing is. This is the only thing that's positive I can see. And that was Sam Allardyce. After 20 games, he had 15 points, and we turned it round and we finished 13th in the league. So we stayed up and we stayed up comfortably under Sam Allardyce, despite having a very similar points ratio at this point of the season. But perhaps worst of all is the points per game. 0.79 points per game is what we're on this season. Our worst run since 1904. That is horrific. That is really, really bad. Our worst run since... And this is over 19 games. It's not even like it's over 3 games where it's completely variable. Where you win a game, your points tally's going to shoot up or anything like that. It's over 19 games. That's plenty of evidence. I almost dread to think what it would be if you went back over the last 40 games or something like that. It would improve a little bit, but not by too much. That is a horrific points per game total. You don't need to be a mathematician or a genius to work out that would put us on 30 points come the end of the season, which is ultimately more than enough, or should I say too little, to get you relegated. You'd be playing championship football. And somebody said something to me yesterday which is almost a terrifying thought. He said, have you not considered that all the managers we're being linked to at the moment to replace David Moyes, all the managers we're being linked to, and I say linked to, not Tuchel or Pochettino, the names that are apparently on the shortlist, you know the ones, Nuno, Rafa, those kind of Daesh, those kind of managers. So have you not noticed that they're also the managers you'd probably want to get you back up again? And I mean, I thought it was true. I thought he's not wrong, is he? If we got relegated, would Rafa or Nuno or Daesh be a good option to get us back? It probably would be. I mean, you could argue that's good planning from the board, so that if we do go down, we've got a manager capable of getting us straight back up again. A bit like what Newcastle did with Rafa Benitez, funnily enough. But anyway, the reason I would like to see David Moyes gone after the Everton game, and it's possibly one of the biggest reasons, bar my lack of hope that Moyes would turn it round, it's the January transfer window. It's such a big thing. And I know I'll keep talking about Newcastle in 2.5 weeks' time. And I know there's a game against Derby County in the middle of that. I know we play Derby in the FA Cup. But I think the board's perspective, not mine, the board's perspective would be it almost doesn't matter to some extent. That it's about staying in the Premier League at this point. And I think we could beat Everton and lose against Derby. I think he'd still be here for the Newcastle game, Moyes. I'm convinced that Moyes would still be here. That the FA Cup game almost does not matter. It's about getting points on the board and staying in the Premier League. Because even if if we beat Everton and then get knocked out of the FA Cup, we are probably still outside the bottom 3. Obviously, the FA Cup doesn't matter when it comes to the league. But that is going to be enough for Moyes to then have the Newcastle game, which is outside the January transfer window. Hypothetically, if Moyes was to lose his job this weekend and we were to get a new manager in on Monday, that would give him 8 days. 8 days until the January transfer window comes to a close. That's enough time. 8 days in the transfer window in January is plenty time to bring in a couple of players that you want, possibly even sell a couple of players that you want. It's more than enough time. And I think any new manager deserves as much opportunity is possible to turn things round. And I think giving him that leeway in the transfer window, I'm assuming there's money there to spend. It might be 20 million that we're getting told regarding Terem Murphy. It might be a little bit less than that, but whatever. There will be money there to spend. And the new manager deserves that opportunity. And I just worry that we win against Everton, and then we get beat against Newcastle, and then we get beat again. Then Moyes gets sacked. New manager comes in. Well, we've just lost 3 games. Granted, we picked up a win in one of those. That's okay. But we're now 2 games down that we've got beat. And the window's gone. The window's been and gone. The squad he's got there is David Moyes' squad, and that is what he's got to run with. A good manager will keep us up. That's what I will say. We are not relegated at this point. Should we keep David Moyes? And yes, I fear for the worst. But we do not need a world-class manager to keep us in the Premier League. I'm still adamant that we've got a good squad. Is it the best squad in the league? No, it's not. Is it a good squad? Yes, I think it is. A good manager comes in, he'll keep us in the Premier League. I am convinced of it. Just like David Moyes did. He came in, kept us in Premier League. The squads at the time were better than those around us. He did a good job. And that's all we require right now. But the longer we leave it, the more difficult it gets. Almost the demand for a better manager increases, but the chance of getting a better manager decreases because of the situation we're in. So regardless of the result this weekend, I hope we win. I really, really hope we win. We need 3 points. This is, time to roll your sleeves up kind of thing and get the win. And I'm aware it gives Moyes a stay of execution, but the end for Moyes feels inevitable now. It feels like he won't be here come the end of the season. It feels like more of a case of when rather than if. And if that is the case, and it is a big if, I don't know, it's just a feeling, but if that is the case, that they need to act this weekend and give the new manager, whoever that might be, whether it is Rafa or someone else, as much chance as possible of turning this round. And the best way to do that is to give them an FA Cup game as their first game, so that there's lesser pressure on there, so they can try something if they want to, whether it's a formation, whether it's players in different positions, whatever. Give them the FA Cup game and give them a week in the transfer window as well to make any changes that he wants, which might go a long, long way. Because what we know the difference one signing can make. Look at Jesse Lingard, come in and scored that many goals, helped us get us 6th in the league. Without Jesse Lingard's goals, we finished further down the table. It's as simple as that. One signing, the right signing, and you require a bit of luck in there, but the right signing can make a huge, huge difference. Go back to Newcastle last season, bringing in like Kevin Trippier, for example, just bringing in Kevin Trippier, fantastic signing, made a huge, huge difference. The same can happen here. I'm just not convinced it'll happen with David Moyes as manager. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Like I said, the reports, what's being reported may not be true. I don't know. I'm just discussing it hypothetically. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Like I said, tomorrow, Everton preview, and we'll be catching up with Darmesh to get the latest gossip on all the West Ham transfers. We'll see you then.